Hello, this is Dr. Duello with a presentation on converting a resume to a curriculum vitae. So the first question is, what is a resume, what is a curriculum vitae, and how do they differ? A resume is a one-page document that contains a summary of relevant job experience and education, while a curriculum vitae, or CV as we call it, is a history of a person's professional life and qualifications. So you may have had a resume as a high school student or as a freshman or a sophomore. We're going to talk about how to convert this to a curriculum vitae, and there are going to be intermediate steps here where you're going to have a hybrid of the two. The changes that take place in this document are going to parallel your advancement through the educational system into the career of your choice. One of the things you want to remember here is that you are writing your curriculum vitae to a stranger. So avoid assumptions, describe activities, avoid abbreviations, etc. There are many correct ways to do this. I'm going to give you one I'll call the Duello version, which is surefire. I use this format, as do many of my faculty colleagues. I want to cover a couple formatting issues first. This document should be easy on the eye, very readable so that the eye can flow down it. So this is where you want 1-inch margins all around. This is not the place to save paper. I'm a tree hugger, but here you want to use the paper well with 1-inch margins. You'll see as I go forward that there is no objective section in the curriculum vitae. You have an objective in a resume. I can't tell you how many students have applied for positions in my laboratory and given me a resume that said, seeking a job in industry. I'm not in industry. Looking for work in a clinical setting. I'm not in a clinical setting. So if you do a resume and if you include an objective, by all means, make sure that the objective is specific to the endpoint. In the curriculum vitae, we do not use objectives. This is covered in a cover letter or elsewhere. More formatting issues, I use one font throughout. I put headings only in bold. I do not combine bold and underlining and italics and colons and color and shadowing. This is not an art project. No, you're not supposed to use everything available in Microsoft Word. I don't use lines to divide things. I don't care for templates. So what we want to do here is we want to start by stating your credentials. Who are you? How do I get in touch with you? Why should I be impressed as a reader? So we start with the name and the contact information. Teresa Duello, a permanent address, a present address. If I'm a student on campus, I may have the campus address here. Next, we're going to go to education, then licensures, then honors and awards. If we look at education here, you can see I've set it off with double spacing, so I pick it out easily. In one of these hybrids, you will have the institution, the major. You may or may not have a GPA, and either the graduation date or the anticipated graduation date. If your GPA is impressive, I would include it. If it's borderline, I would not. The GPA should indicate the scale. Some universities use a 4-point scale, some use a 5, so be sure to indicate which one it is. The next category section is licensures. Many of you won't have licensures. This is fine. Just delete it. Here is an example. I have emergency medical technician certification in 2009 at the Baltimore County Area Technical School. I'm going to move next to honors and awards. Why should I be impressed? Here I have the Dean's List, the Chancellor's Scholarship, and a Library Research Award. These are basically honors recognized at the campus, national, state, national, or international level. I have had students who have drafted CVs or resumes, and under the honors they had, I was honored to work in the Duello laboratory. Well, I'm gratified, I'm really pleased, but this is not a universally recognized honor and not where this should be included. For all of you who are in undergraduate research programs, MARC, RISE, LSAMP, etc., all of these are honors. Make sure that you include them here. Next, I have professional societies and organizations. Here, I don't usually put campus organizations. I put state, national, international organizations. I have the Society for the Study of Reproduction. I have the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. The acronym for this is SACNAS. I'm not putting the acronym down. When you write, the only time you describe something and put the acronym behind it is when you intend to talk about it later, where you're going to use the acronym, the SACNAS version. You do not put those acronyms in if you're not going to use them elsewhere in the document. Also, just want to add here is that many of the national science organizations have student memberships for a reduced price. So you can become a student member of one of the national organizations at this point in your career. Now this much is pretty much standard, but now things begin to vary. And when we look at how they vary, what we want to ask is what makes sense? What is common sense? Okay? So if you're looking for a research position, I would have the next section be research. However, if you were looking for a teaching position, I would put teaching next and put research later. And if you need another category, you can invent one. So this is not all hard, fast, and rigid from this point forward. So when we talk about research experience here, I can tell you that this is where students have the most difficulty. And first I want to indicate that I have the title, Research Assistant, where, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, institution, University of Wisconsin-Madison, the city, and the state. Even if I'm using my CV on campus, where they know me, I still put all of this information. And here I have the period of time, summer 2010, off to the side. This is just like the same order you use addressing an envelope, from the most specific, research assistant, to the least specific, the city and the state. Now as we look at the actual description, this is what is a challenge. You can see here that I am not using whole sentences, I am using phrases. Okay? Clear, concise, lucid. I can name that tune in 5 notes. So what we have here is examination of the role of gonadotropin releasing hormone on secretion of human chorionic gonadotropin in term placental, experimental model, to assess placental insufficiency. So what did we do? We examined the role of gonadotropin releasing hormone on secretion of human chorionic gonadotropin. You could include that you demonstrated 2 forms X, Y, and Z, some finding. And why is it important to study this? Because we're assessing placental sufficiency. Is the placenta producing enough sufficient hormones? Here I have supervisor, Teresa Duello, PhD. Sometimes students put research assistant Smith lab. Well, there are a lot of Smiths in science. So what I recommend is instead, after the research description, you put principal investigator, supervisor, mentor, and indicate here who was sponsoring your work. You can see that for readability, I have lined up the time, summer 2010, with those listed in honors and awards above. I either omit months or I abbreviate them. It is not necessary to be so specific to say June 10th to August 15th. The broad category is sufficient here. If you've conducted research and have submitted an abstract for a presentation, those presentations are listed here under abstracts, and we have publications as well. I can't tell you how often students will have presentations. They have a title, they don't have the authors, they don't have where it was presented or when. So what I recommend here strongly is you use a standard bibliographic format. If you go to your librarian will be happy to help you with this. There are many correct standard bibliographic formats. Different scientific journals use different formats. What you need to do here is pick one and be consistent in your use of it. So you can see with the abstracts, it's who are the authors, not just yourself. The title, Low Birth Weight Trends in Dane versus Milwaukee County. Where was it presented? 13th Annual Meeting of the Wisconsin Association of Perinatal Care. Where? La Crosse, Wisconsin. When? 2010. Same for the publication. First, second, third author. The title of the paper, the journal, the volume, the pages, the year. You have to be thorough here, and you have to credit everyone involved in the project. If you're seeking an MD PhD, you may include medical setting experience as well. What do you know? What are your experiences in a medical setting to verify that you know what it means or what it consists of to be an MD? So here, same format, title, volunteer, where, Blue Bus Clinic, at the University of Wisconsin Student Health Center in Madison, Wisconsin, from 2008 to 2010. People aren't going to know what a Blue Bus Clinic is. So here we developed and distributed information on the prevention of HIV infections, including an exhibit at the University of Wisconsin Student Health Fair. Sufficient information for anybody to ask a question. I also may have been involved in community outreach. Instead of clustering all of this under volunteering, I break it down into categories so I can see specifically what you've done. You were a volunteer at the Habitat for Humanity in Madison, Wisconsin. Many people are going to know what Habitat for Humanity is, but here I still have construction of 2 homes for families left homeless by fire. Now, oftentimes when students send me a draft of a curriculum vitae, what they'll do is just have experience in research, in teaching, in medical, and community. Everything is bundled together. But maybe you have all of these broken down into categories, but there's something left that's relevant. So you may put in other work experience. Say you worked as a secretary in the National Insurance Company in Madison, Wisconsin. You reviewed claims and prepared correspondence to clients. So this is relevant to working in a medical setting that you have insurance experience, so you may want to put this in. But this is your professional history. So other work experience is not McDonald's, Burger King, and Taco John. Okay? Next, we have extracurricular activities. Again, some students cluster everything in volunteering. I tend to break them out into categories. Extracurricular activities. First, I have Professional Association of Latinos for Medical School Access, PALMA. Now, that's pretty descriptive, but you could also follow it with a short, brief summary of what the organization did. Also, Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science in the University of Wisconsin chapter. If I'm a national member, I would have put this up in memberships and societies and organizations. If I worked with a campus chapter, I would put it here. Now, I also said that if you have more things that you can invent a category. So I give a lot of outreach presentations at different universities and high schools. So I may have a category that says outreach presentations. What is the title? Where was it given? And what was the year? Now, references are not part of the curriculum vitae. They are listed on a separate page. Here, you do not want to make assumptions about the information or the manner in which they may contact your references. So you give them a post office address, you give them a phone number, and you give an email address. What I like to do off on the right here is indicate that person's relationship to me. If you did research with Dr. Duello and it said principal investigator or supervisor Teresa Duello, PhD, up in the CV, then they'd know why you were listing me as a reference. But if my name wasn't somewhere else, they wouldn't know who I was and why you were recommending me. So over here I have biology professor because that's just very helpful to the reader. Sometimes students will put references upon request, and anymore I always say, excuse me, include your references. Excuse me, of course. And I asked a student one time, why did you put references upon request? And the student said, well, if I put references upon request, then they have to contact me. And actually, they don't have to anything. If there are many qualified people and their references are available and I don't have to go to extra work to find out how to contact them, your application may just go to the bottom of the pile. So that's a big gamble to think that I have to contact your references. A few more remarks. Always spell check your CV. You may think that typos are not a big thing, but errors indicate sloppiness. If you're going to be sloppy in your CV, are you going to be sloppy in my lab? That's the way I think about this. There are some things you don't want to put on your CV. Your height, your weight, your social security number, reasons for having left a job, pictures of yourself. This is definitely not Facebook. No pictures. Sometimes if you apply to a graduate program, they may ask you for a picture, but this is only so that they can recognize you at the airport. It's not part of the CV. No salary information, and never omit a professional position held. This is an ethical issue. We've all heard on the news of somebody who falsified their curriculum vitae or resume, or else they omitted things. These are ethical issues. You do not want to do that. My personal position is that I do not put anything on a CV that is not to be a factor in consideration of my application. So my date of birth, my age doesn't matter, my place of birth, maybe only citizenship, and my marital status, whether I'm single or whether I'm married, is not part of my job qualification. I encourage you to have several people within the field of interest critique your resume. Not just the people who love you, they already think you're wonderful. Not just people with whom you share living space, your roommate is convenient, but not the best person. Not only one graduate student or professional student you have to know. They're early in their career, they do not have the accumulated experience. Go to a professor or a faculty member. A few more individual preferences here. Some places they will tell you to use active verbs in your research descriptions or your activities. Supervised X, Y, and Z. I tend to use nouns. Supervision of. It's purely just your preference. But do not start phrases with participles, with ing words, working on, researching, etc., etc. You'll also note that we do not use personal pronouns. I'm not using whole sentences and I'm not using personal pronouns. There's no I, me, my. Even in scientific articles we say we did X, Y, and Z, but we otherwise do not use singular personal pronouns. Skip all the unnecessary punctuation. It may stop the reading instead of making it more clear. As you can see, I don't use bullet points. I use indentation and bold. My experience is that when students tend to use bullet lists and then they use it as a laundry list. So actually they're saying, what did I want to write down? Am I remembering everything? Well, I did PCR, I did Western blots, and it's a laundry list. What you want to do here is state the science, not produce a list of techniques. Make sure your format is consistent and flawless. I do not have students include high school information after their junior year. By the time you're a junior or senior, you should have sufficient research and activities that are much more compelling than anything you've done in high school. I teach an undergraduate health disparities course, and I have students first send me, if they have a resume, to send me a draft. And then I instruct them on how to construct a CV. These are freshmen and sophomores. And then in the next step, I send them an email like this, and I say, okay, remove everything from high school. From your junior year on, I'm going to want high school off of that. And then I get an email that says, but Dr. D, if I take out all of the high school stuff, there's nothing left. What do I do? Well, this was my intention. When you see that there's not much left, what is it do you want to have on your CV by the time you're a freshman or a sophomore? So have a plan for what you want to add and think forward. Be proactive about your plans instead of using hindsight. So what you can see here is you can make a list, set goals for what you want to add by the time you're a junior or a senior or applying to graduate school. I cannot tell you how many times in my early career I saw juniors who were wanting help with their application, but they weren't aware of everything that they should have done that they didn't know about. I very actively make a point to advise freshmen and sophomores so I don't meet people as juniors only to deliver them basically bad news on what they haven't done in preparation. So be proactive, think forward, and I wish you the very best. Good luck with this project.